Hello, my dear students of Honors Third Year. A very good morning to all. I hope that you all are hale and hearty by the grace of Almighty God. I am also hale and hearty. This is the fourth online lecture for you, and on this lecture, I am going to discuss an apology for poetry by Sir Philip Sidney under the course of Introduction to Literary Criticism. So let's get started with PowerPoint presentation. First of all, welcome you all to my online class. On behalf of Nobiganj Gov College, Hobiganj, this is Mohammad Masud Mia, lecturer in English, Nobiganj Gov College, Hobiganj. Today's topic is an apology for poetry. Subject, Introduction to Poetry. Here, apology means defense. That we will find that Sir Philip Sidney defended the poetry. This class is designed for the students of the third year, Department of English level honors. Okay, let's start. An Apology for Poetry by Philip Sidney. Philip Sidney, in his Apology for Poetry, reacts against the attacks made on poetry by the Puritan Stephen Gusson. Actually, Stephen Gusson was a satirist in that era, and he made some satirical comments against the poetry, and Sir Philip Sidney defended the poetry by writing the literary piece of namely an apology for poetry. To Sidney. To Sidney means, according to Sidney, poetry is an art of imitation for specific purpose. It is imitated to teach and delight. According to Sidney, poetry is written for teaching and giving delights. According to him, he refers to Philip Sidney. According to Philip Sidney, poetry is simply a superior means of communication, and its value depends on what is communicated. Okay, next. So, even history, when it is described in a lively and passionate expression, becomes poetic. He prefers imaginative literature that teaches better than history and philosophy. A literature has the power to reproduce an ideal golden world, not just a brazen world. These opinions are expressed by Philip Sidney in his literary piece. Next, we will see that what kind of comments or criticism brought on poetry by the Stephen Gusson. Here we see that Stephen Gusson makes charges. Charges means we know that to put on some charge on something. On poetry or acquisition, we can also say that charges means acquisition. Charges on poetry which Sidney answers. The charges are, or the acquisitions are, poetry is waste of time. Poetry is mother of lies. It is nurse of abuse. Plato had rightly banished the poets from his ideal world. These four criticisms are put by Stephen Gusson, and Philip Sidney defended four comments or charges against the poetry brought upon by Stephen Gusson. We will see the later what Philip Sidney said. Against these charges, Sidney has answered them in the following ways. Here we will see the reply of Philip Sidney. He said that poetry is the source of knowledge and a civilizing force for Sidney. For Sidney means Sidney believes that poetry is the source of knowledge and a civilizing force. Gusson attacks on poetry, saying that it corrupts the people and it is the waste of time. But Sidney says that no learning is so good as that which teaches and moves to virtue, and that nothing can both teach and amuse so much as poetry does. Okay, next, Sidney says that in ancient societies, poetry was the main source of education. He remembers ancient Greek society that respected poets. The poets are always to be looked up. Looked up means to be respected. So, poetry is not waste of time. Okay. To the second charge, Sidney answers that poet does not lie because he never affirms that his fiction is true and can never lie. Here he refers to the poet. Philip Sidney says that poet never confirms or affirms or firmly says that his writing or fiction is true and can never lie. Then the poetic truths are ideal and universal. Therefore, poetry cannot be a mother of lies. Sidney rejects that poetry is the source of abuses. Abuses means mistreatment. To him means in the opinion of Sidney, it is people who abuses poetry, not the vice versa. Vice versa. That means poetry doesn't abuse the man, but men or people abuses the poetry. By this line or by this comment, Sidney wants to mean that poetry doesn't corrupt the man, people himself corrupt the poetry. Okay. Next, abuses are more nursed by philosophy and history than by poetry, by describing battles, bloodshed, violence, etc. On the contrary, poetry, means on the other side, poetry helps to maintain morality and peace by avoiding such violence and bloodshed. Moreover, it brings light to knowledge. Okay, next for Sidney, art is a speaking picture having spatio-temporal dimension. For Aristotle, human action is more important, but for Sidney, nature is important. Okay, artists are to create arts considering the level of readers. The only purpose of art is to teach and delight, like the whole tendency of Renaissance. Sidney favors poetic justice that is possible in poets' world, where good are rewarded and wicked people are punished. That is the end of today's lecture. Thank you all for bearing with me. I think I will come with you again with a new topic. By this, before that, stay well, stay nice. Bye bye.